Hello, everybody. Hi. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just the way it's been today. It's such good company. Welcome, everybody, to the Phoenix History podcast. I'm joined by another member of the paranormal group, the Paranormal Inspectres. There's a certain way of probably saying this, isn't there? Sort of thing. But I'm joined by Sue. Mm-hmm. And hi. First off, you're right.
Yeah.
It's like we've met before. We've been interviewing various members of the team.
Yep.
And we've had a jolly good conversation. So no pressure, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
For everybody on there. So introduce yourself. So Sue is part of the Paranormal Inspectres. Please feel free to check the link below. What is your role first off in the group?
Well, basically we are all equal. Yeah. We all have different skills. I suppose you could call them skills, or we believe we have the skills. And I tend to do the minutes for meetings and scouting for venues, and just joining in with the event.
Which is lovely because you're so active at the moment, and you've been active for... How long's the group been going for now?
This group has been going since March, I believe. Yeah. We've been really busy.
I was going to say, because when we've met, it's been like so many interesting stories, especially from the rest of the team, about how everything's been going and stuff. I suppose really then, the main question is what we should be asking, we've asked everybody really, is how did you get into it?
How did I get into it? Okay. Way back from when I was a kid. I was in a family that were sensitives. Mm-hmm. I grew up with people very often having sensitive events and seances and various things that went on. My father's cousin was a clairvoyant. His mother was a medium. Mm-hmm. And I just grew up with it, really. Then, of course, things start to happen that can't be explained. Now, how that's happened, I don't really know. Even retrospectively, I don't really know. And then I've had experiences myself which have caused me to wonder how it's happening. Yeah. You know, where does it come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally respect that, because we've off camera sort of had some really interesting conversations about stuff, and it's been really refreshing, because I think actually when you get people who are into the paranormal and into sort of like the ghost lore and all this sort of stuff, it's amazing how in a strange way there's a beautiful bond of commonality that everybody sort of seems to have. They might sometimes have different opinions on certain things, but fundamentally it's about asking questions and finding answers, isn't it, really?
And it's about not just the paranormal as in ghosts, it's about the unknown and vibrations and energy and the conditioning that we have that may not be the reality that we're living in.
And I think, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that, you know, to my absolute shame, for a bit of light comic relief, your historical research puts me to shame, I think, personally. So the beautiful work that you do, which you'll find out when we start doing the case study stuff, is actually inspirational for me. Because I feel that I'm a bit lazy these days. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like, I sort of like an air raid shower, and I'm like, how much more do I need to go into it and stuff? And you're going throughout. No, I don't mean it's not necessarily me being lazy, but I think it's like, I assume that most of the people who are out there have seen X amount to know now what they're about, and therefore I don't need to do it. So when you came along and you showed me some wonderful stuff, it was actually sort of like reinvigorating me to go, right, okay, come on, Dan, get back to the old self of like how you do this.
The interesting thing is that we're looking at what is there out there. Why do people get afraid of it? How can we help people that are afraid of it? Because you don't need to be. Yeah. Can we debunk it so that you no longer are afraid of it? And if there is something else there, and sometimes there is, that we can't explain, then that's worth investigating. And then you can come away from that with each of us have a piece of evidence. Yeah. And when you piece that together and then you research it and you find actually it rings a lot of bells with the truth, historical truth.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I think it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? That, like, we're probably aware that a lot of people who are probably watching this podcast might have never either been to a paranormal event, or they've not really. There might be some neutral skeptics out there, or neutral people, for example. But I genuinely find it really interesting that when people start opening up about their stories, there is a genuine sense of real realism and you know what I mean, like there is a moment when they start talking, and they start, especially those classic ones which I'm sure you've heard of. Well, I think you might have mentioned it, which is really made me laugh, like, where they go, oh, like, have you ever seen, they go, well, no, but and it's like,
everybody does.
and then they go through it, and you're like, oh, okay, and then they start talking about it, and you're like, okay. And it's like I said, because I mean, at the end of the day, what we're here to do, to collaborate with each other, isn't necessarily to prove that ghosts are real.
No.
But it is to put stuff out there in the ether and let people decide for themselves and let them tally up. And like we said before, the interesting thing is that in most cases, the history does, strangely enough, tally. And more importantly, it's stuff that even you found probably in your research, especially when these stuff, was that there is even more to it that might be.
That's right.
And obviously when we spoke about the stuff that I've done on Bluebell Hill, for example, is that when you start really digging into it, I mean, whoever the ghost of Bluebell Hill could be, there's more than just like the ones you're actually thinking. If you wanted to do that, if you wanted to put a name to the ghost, and I think that's what's really interesting.
I think a lot of people key on to one particular story, and it's a real shame because there is so much more. For instance, Pluckley, you know,
of course,
they dive into just the odd one or two, or those that are reported. And actually, when I researched a lot of Pluckley, some of them couldn't possibly be ghosts, and others aren't even spoken about. You know, the possibility of there being some kind of paranormal event isn't even being spoken about. And I think it's just that people key on to things, and it's a bigger thing. It's a bigger subject. A much bigger subject. And also it brings us to, and as a group we talk about this quite a lot, it's how are our minds sinking, because they do. What are the synchronicities, because there are some. And what is that energy that we build? We can, you know, you get 5 people in a room and you can build an energy. And what is that energy, and how does it happen? You can't see it. It is like electricity. It is there. An energy that is in our body, once the body has died, the energy doesn't just die with it.
No, it moves on. I appreciate that, absolutely.
And it goes somewhere. And people don't even know that they pick up things. They don't really. I was in a circle at one point, and I was asked to bring I asked everybody in the circle to bring an envelope with a photograph in it. Which is what people did. And we passed them around to see if we could do some psychometry on it, and various people said, oh, yes. And the one that I had, people passed around very quickly. And I said to one person, can you tell me anything about that before you pass it on? And she said, oh, it's just blonde. And then it came round. And then when we opened them, my picture was of Myra Hindley.
Wow.
And the whole group was absolutely stunned that that's why they didn't want to touch it. And it was not that they'd picked up on anything that they could talk about. No.
Interesting. No, yeah, absolutely interesting. And I think this is the thing, isn't it? Is that really, I think that I often wonder sometimes in a sort of deeper way of like that I think you have to look at what evidence and what questions get put out there that do remain unexplained, or that we can't explain them yet. And we might have certain conclusions or certain theories about it. But the point is, that's still not going to change the fact that there are things that are still unexplained.
That's right.
So the point is that because it's there, what remains is whatever's people's interpretation of it. And it can be as basic as like what we spoke about, like infrasound, for example, which plays a huge part in the minds. We know that exists, and science can explain that. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's for every single case.
No.
Doesn't mean that's going to explain every single case. And we don't want to go too in depth in this episode, but also we talked about my theories of the primal sort of like instincts of energy and stuff. And we'll probably explain that at some other point about my theory. I've never really discussed it because actually, if I've been honest, I've always been a little bit shy about putting it out there because I think that you have to, because it's like with anything, isn't it? If you put out a theory when you're not necessarily a scientist or anything you can explain, you're only going on the knowledge that you've read or everything else like that. Because it is such a passion of mine, paranormal law and the history and all that sort of stuff, I do think that there's every possibility that explanation could be part of another explanation or anything like that. Yeah. I suppose that really, I mean, like, obviously, because this is a relatively new sort of like investigation team for you, and you're so busy. I mean, obviously, we know obviously our collaborations and whatnot that's going to be happening. But I mean, are there things that for the audience out there that we're going to be covering? I mean, we obviously we know with Bluebell Hill, Pen and Heath are the two that we've spoken about already. Yeah. We don't want to give too much away for people, but we're going to be covering those especially. I'm sure there's going to be lots of others, but in your terms, I mean, like I want to go back to the encounter stuff now a little bit more. I want to sort of like full circle this a little bit. With the encounters that you've had, is there anything that you've genuinely felt like, not necessarily you've been scared or frightened of necessarily, but is there anything you felt like, oh, okay, this is a little bit out of my realm of like how I've come across?
Yeah, twice. There was one particular property that I visited in my work where I had to be there for a specific purpose, and those people weren't there. And for no reason, I fell over. No reason. I was standing still. I was on the ground, and my first instinct was to look around to see where I'd been pushed or what I'd fallen on, and there was nothing. And I did what I needed to do and left. And then I was called back again for another reason. And one of the reasons was, without having to give too much away, the door needed replacing. The front door needed replacing. So the front door was replaced, a heavy wooden door, and the locksmith left, and I went in, got the keys, and did what I needed to do. And as I went to the car to collect a tape measure, the door slammed, and it was very heavy. It was very new, and it was stuck on the carpet. So that was another instance, and then I was called back again, and this time I took a K2 and I took my phone as well, and spoke to whatever was there, and it responded quite a lot. Then I was called back again, and this has gone on for years now. I keep getting called back to this same property, and I thought I'd caught my coat in the car. And I opened the door and discovered that it was my finger and it was completely broken. And I did what I needed to do, got back in the car, and the K2 that was there from the previous time was there, and it was registering. And I said, "Are you still here with me?" And it was registering again. Now this has gone on for 3 years perhaps, and I am still being called back to that property. I will not go in that road again. I can't go there. And even recently I've had to visit a neighbour. I found it very difficult to be there. I don't know what that was. The research I did on it was very interesting, and the property had a lot of toys in there for an older lady. That was a bit unusual. And there was a young boy that had been living there for many years, and he was killed on a wagon. And next door, where there was a public house that used to hold inquests, is where he had his inquest read. And I just can't go there anymore. That's that one. I mean, that really bothered me. And then recently, I went to Bicknor. Just to go and see Bicknor. It was in the middle of nowhere. We parked up. We were there for all of about 15 minutes and had to leave. Now we left, and I saw some cones on the floor, and I thought, I'll have those. Put them in the car, and we left. And we had 2 sat-navs giving us different directions. We could not get away from it. eventually I chucked the cones out of the car and we managed to get out and left. But for 2-3 days, I was so affected that the team were worried about me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that's all about. The team are going to go back there to see if they can find anything that corresponds with the way I was feeling. And I have done some research on it, and we'll see what they come up with.
Yeah. I mean, we've spoken about it, haven't we, there? And said, like, if there was anything I'd experienced on that. And it was hard for me at the time because obviously now that since the Cornwall episode, where I've genuinely felt something really blocking me, now I know what that feels like.
It's odd.
Anything
it's
else
odd.
to me is just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. And I think it's the thing that I always have to put into people's minds is that whether people believe it or not, outside people, to people who've experienced something, it is real. Do you know what I mean?
Real.
And you can't take that away from anybody. And I think that's one of the caveats I always have to put with people is that when people share their stories with me, even if I'd never witnessed or experienced stuff for myself, I would be worried for that person because to them it's real.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And it's like, so obviously, you know what I mean? But in that mindset, because you sort of look at it and you go, well, actually, like, okay, well, something must have happened to you there, or something must have triggered something.
Yes.
And like we said before, obviously, like, your experience is obviously similar to the one in Cornwall. I mean, like, you know, but in terms of, for me, it was a very different, bizarre experience. But I mean, like, you know, I call it bizarre of that because, again, you don't expect it. You go there, you kind of like, okay, right. And then all of a sudden, like, it's just like, no, don't want you there. That's it.
Another thing that I find is really odd as well is that I use dowsing rods.
Yep.
And I cannot explain
why they always,
move.
all the time. I know, yeah.
And just recently, Joe and I, one of the girls, we both were just collecting equipment together, and we had both of them. And I asked 3 questions that I knew she had no answer to because she didn't know. And both rods were doing the same thing. And I cannot explain that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, obviously for other people out there, people might be aware of dowsing rods, but I think you need to really put this in context. If they sometimes, the idea is that really you can have them, it depends how you hold them, how you sort of place them, but really minimal contact with the rods themselves through you is probably the best option.
It's an idiomotor.
It is, yeah. Some people, I've seen people actually hold them physically and that's fine. But you want to remove the suggestion as much as possible.
That's right.
That's really what you want to try and do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I'm preaching to you, Kaved. I'm just trying to sort of explain it to people out there. But it is really trying to remove that suggestion. And the fact of the matter is that I'm very interested with dowsing rods from a personal level because I really desperately don't want it to believe it. Do you know what I mean by that? I know it sounds stupid because it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
And yet every time I've seen people use it, and it's just every time it hits. So how does that work?
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like how
are they working together?
Yeah.
And sometimes we have dowsing rods, we have the K2s and we have cat balls, and they will all go off together. And I don't understand that either. And is that the energy that we are building between us that's actually making that happen? I mean, the idiomotor is what we're talking about, I suppose.
Because obviously, I mean, you know, for me, like I said, the dowsing rod idea is so interesting to me because obviously you pick up ley lines, you can pick up different types of energy. In theory, that's the idea anyway, and we know that actually if you look at it, and I'm sure other people can sort of like put it into routes, but I think you have to. I've personally never done it. I've never really picked them up, so I'm not really going to collect. But I'm also very aware that even though I haven't, I know that the power of suggestibility is quite minimal to a degree. I'm sure I could be wrong, but even I've witnessed it so many times, dowsing rods, that even I'm like, how can you have like 2 tubes, inner tubes with the dowsing rod inside that are freely moving if they want to move wherever they want to, and yet for whatever reason they are connecting or they're moving away or they're going left or right. And it's just, and so for me, I do find that interesting because as we've spoken about before, like, you know, I do believe in energy. So my mindset, I do think, well, then energy has to sort of conduct itself to a certain degree.
Yes.
So where's that got to go? Is there a conductor for it? And although it sounds quite primal in the fact that you can get any rods particularly and make them do that, there's still an element that has to go on with that and there's still a process. And I think that so it's, I find it interesting.
Yeah, it is
Do you
very
know what I mean?
interesting.
Like,
And at the weekend, we had one of our skeptics
yeah,
have a go at holding the rods. And even more interesting was that not only did they not move, they did not move.
right.
They did not move 1 inch.
Wow.
And I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously, obviously talked to John, and obviously people will see that episode. That obviously he talks about aura and energy, and
Yes,
that's also
yeah.
interesting to me, and I find that
Yeah.
really fascinating, because I do think that, again, it highlights that sort of energy field. People out there might disagree with all that, and that's totally fine. But I think that from my experience of it all, there is definitely something there.
Yeah.
And I think we're very naive in the human skepticism, that just because science hasn't explained it yet doesn't mean that it doesn't
That's
exist.
right, yeah.
It's just that we haven't, that science put its energy and time into other things that they might not have necessarily put into. And so...
And then you're talking instinct.
Absolutely. And for every... I don't want to name specific paranormal famous cases, but for every type of one of those... Enfield Poltergeist may be part of that. Did I say that a little bit too loud? Part of that, I'm just going to say with Enfield Poltergeist, we've spoken about already.
Yeah.
Part of that might be a little bit over-exaggerated. The point of the matter is that for every type of one that has certain parts of it that are genuinely a bit, you're kind of ruining it for the genuine, real science of it that we're interested. There are other ones that genuinely cannot be necessarily explained at the moment, and that's why I have to keep always. I think it's important to put that word "at the moment."
Yeah,
we don't necessarily know just yet. It's like there's still answers, and obviously with our teaming together, we can at least look at the historical level of it and try and put the story of that together.
That's the connection for me. How do we connect that with history? And sometimes we can.
Absolutely.
And there's no reason for it. Recently, we took another walk around Pennenden Heath, and one of these gadgets on the phone came up with the name Moore,
right?
Moore, and I came back and researched that and found him. And I don't understand how that had happened.
Yeah.
I don't go for gadgets basically, other than
I think we've spoken about at the very beginning. It's that not that I'm sceptical of gadgets, but I think we need to tap into our instincts as the primal thing, and then you know what I mean.
It's about the energy and how we are responding to that energy.
Yeah.
And how do we harness that?
Yeah.
And use it properly.
Yeah. I think
animals seem to do it.
Yeah, because actually in a strange way, you absolutely. And I think actually you sort of mentioned something that's interesting to me, because I think with the gadget side of things, I do think, unfortunately, popular these days, we've spoken about this before, popular maybe channels, won't mention who they are, but most people will probably know them, sort of have ruined that a little bit, because they've sort of, some of those inventions that they've created, I'm a little bit like, really? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Where's the science coming from that? And it's interesting and it's entertaining, which is what they claim, entertainment, and I appreciate that. But again, I feel sometimes that ruins a real moment of it, and I think that's probably where it's going. And I think that this is why we have such a kinship, because we start from a historical level, we start from that basic moment, and we move on. And I find it, in that respect, it is fascinating how let's paint a picture for people. How can someone see a random German pilot in the middle of a field and not know that there'd been an incident there? And yet you get another person see the same thing again, not, how can they witness that? Even on not necessarily a psychosomatic level, because it's not like, unless you go to a memorial which says German pilot down here, or you into history, and again, no offence, but the education system, and we can safely say this, isn't going to necessarily specifically go, right, today, kids, we're going to cover a down German pilot in that. It just doesn't work.
No,
you know what I mean?
No.
It's a generalisation rather than a sort of like individual basis. So I do find that interesting when people do witness these types of encounters. And it's like, well, there's no way you would have necessarily known about that. You know what I mean?
And that now you're tipping into regression
this
and
is
genetic memory.
And I used to sort of think to myself, because I am of that age where pubs, And you would still get pub talk, which I used to refer to it as. We get the locals sort of saying, oh, down that road, that person... And maybe that might have been a sort of psychosomatic thing. But the modern stuff now, where there's no... You know what I mean? There's no obvious form of that storytelling communication and people still see stuff. I'm like, okay, right, you know what I mean? That's interesting. How can you sort of... And for most of you out there, obviously most people would know my favourite ghost story ever was not even a ghost story, but it's the Swanscombe airship. When airships weren't even around, and there's this story of them seeing an airship that floated across Swanscombe Church, and it's just like, okay, explain that to me. I don't really... I think that's the greatest story in Kent, paranormal-wise or unexplained-wise, because you've got... We'll remind ourselves, Sophie's in the background, hopefully remind ourselves to put that video down, because that is my favourite story. Because they said that the metal from the anchor was used as the hinges of the church door. Now that's technically folklore, I suppose, in that way. But there is definitely recordings of this airship that flew over before airships and hot air balloons were even invented. So I'm no, you know what I mean? Like, it just does really make me like go...
Is that a time slip, do you think?
I don't know. I want to... My basic brain is saying maybe there was like a primitive airship that somebody had designed completely flukily and managed to get lost in the wind. But it was... But the point is, because I'm not necessarily an ancient alien believer, but that does interest me again when you do see sort of cave art. You do see stories of certain things. A lot of that you kind of have to take with a pinch of salt. And I've also got a really big theory on the idea of abduction, which I might explain at some point. But basically, it's a form of trauma from coming from the womb. And that sounds a bit complicated.
Yes, just a bit.
Just a bit.
Are you talking about the Anunnaki?
No. So, okay, I'll explain it to people if they want to be interested. Obviously, it's a conversation. So my theory has always been with the idea of like abduction. Alien abduction has always been that. It's so interesting that most people's commonality of the story literally mimics the idea of you being born. So, for example, most people would sort of they'd come out and they'd see a bright white light.
Yeah.
Well, what's the first thing you're going to encounter when you're coming out the womb of someone? Yeah. You're going to see a massive bright surgical light from the thing. They witness these funny shaped beings. Well, the point is you're literally just born. Your eyes are going to be fuzzy and hazy. Everything's going to be blurry.
Right.
People's eyes are going to be bigger than big. You know what I mean? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
And what's probably happened is that for some strange reason, the birthing process... God, people are going to hate me for saying this. It's all a bit out there. But the birthing process for them was probably so traumatic that it's lodged in their brain somewhere.
Yeah.
And that one day when they've become older or whatever, they've had this triggered event that they assume is an alien abduction. But actually everything they've described is exactly the same type of thing. When they see medical stuff, well, again, you've come out of the womb, there's going to be trays of medical... Do you see what I mean by that? I apologise, that's quite a
That's an interesting thought.
But it is, but that's how I look at it. I'm not saying, again, that everybody's encounter or abduction is not real to them, because it is. But it's funny, if you literally put alien abduction, like massive grey eyes, white light, surgical equipment, blah, 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 what are the first things you're expecting to see when you've just been born? And your eyes are all fuzzy, you can't really... you're literally just being born. You don't get born and then you go, right, I've got 20/20 vision and I can see everything clearly. And it's not like... You've never ever heard of a baby come out of the womb. I haven't. Not that I'm experiencing that. But that's come out not crying. Do you know what I mean? Or being traumatised by the fact of, oh God, I'm out. Do you know what I mean? Sort of thing. And it's interesting when people, literally, you look at their stories and you look at, like, literally being born and you're like, okay. Like, seems like it would be correlating quite nicely with that. And maybe they've just snapped into some sort of trauma that's just taken them back, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But that's how I look at it.
How do you explain children that see imaginary people? Or
so we spoke about the idea, didn't we, that we sort of said that obviously the psychosis exists, so let's just put that out there. We know that psychosis is a valid thing.
Yeah.
I work with people who have psychosis, so that's kind of like a big thing. I've seen that. But I think the imaginary thing that's interesting, because I genuinely feel that on a paranormal sense, to them that is real. So there's no denying that. Is it... Then you have to answer, what is it specifically that they're seeing? Because if we look at a paranormal world, we know that younger kids, pre-pubescence, will be more susceptible to energy and manipulation through, if you want to look at like evil, manipulative spirit types of things. You encompass that with maybe if they've got ADHD or autism.
Yeah.
It's basically a cocktail
Yes.
for absorbing energy
Yes.
in some sort of way.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, hopefully that's answered it. But I genuinely believe all of that, but also that maybe there is an element of paranormal to that. But even more so, there's another element on top of that, which has made them susceptible even more so in the first place. That's given them that platform.
Yeah.
Because otherwise everybody would be experiencing it.
See, this is the kind of paranormal that we're interested in.
Yeah.
Not the hoo
No.
stuff, and not the scream and run away stuff, or investigate and then forget it.
Yeah.
We need to know why we felt that way, how we felt that way, what evidence we've got, how did we prove any of that.
Yeah, because I think fundamentally we have to look at the basic fact that everybody is individual. I'm not saying that just because you might have autism or ADHD, you're going to experience things, because you don't have to have anything like that and you can still experience it. But what you do need to have is some form of like individual, let's just say rewiring of the brain a little bit that makes it different. And the thing is, I always pride myself on the fact we're all individual anyway, but we still have a lot of common traits. So it's like we're individual, but we're all still part of the species, and we're still part of a tribe. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so it's that connection that we have. And so I think that some people, as we spoke about before, will be more receptive than others. And some people might have more of a, how to sort of say, might have more an advantage because they might have like autism or some form of like condition, let's just sort of say, that might affect them to see things slightly differently. And we know that anyway, factually, our senses play a huge part in that. People who can't see, obviously everything else
is best.
So factually, in that way, that is true.
Yeah.
It just might mean that we're not taking into consideration other aspects of people who don't necessarily have, because that's physical. But what about mental states? So we know that physical states, for example, like if we lose our hearing, we pick up on our sights a lot more susceptible. But it's rare that people question mental states, whether that's just as impactful when it comes to our senses.
Yeah.
Because we could see someone who can see, hear, communicate really well, and by all accounts be labelled as normal, quote unquote. But that doesn't stop them from necessarily being receptive, because they've got every other chance of being receptive, because there might be synapses or other elements in their brain, or even trauma, like we've spoken about before. Yeah. Form of trauma that hasn't been dealt with, they can bring on something going through. Yeah. Which I suppose in full circle probably wraps around my sort of like paranormal, like abduction, sort of, you know what I mean, trauma. Because I'm sure most people out there, obviously most people know my story, but trauma we've all had trauma, like trauma.
Yes.
And it does affect us.
Yes.
And our brains are very good at hiding that or masking it over in other formats or other ways. And then the question is how does it manifest it? How does it come out? Yeah. And we don't really know until, you know what I mean? Like there might be other ways that we go through that. So I think it's interesting.
But some of that is the conversations that people have, the triggers that you're given. Yeah. It's a little bit worrying sometimes.
It is I agree.
You can play with somebody's mind by triggering stuff.
Well, the person, one of my favourite people of all time, someone I'd love to interview is Darren Brown. I've got all of his books and I love him dearly, and I wish he'd be my ultimate guest, because I genuinely find him so interesting. And I look at the psychology of his stuff. Like, I mean, his book Happy, for example, I just love that book so much. It talks about stoicism, and it helped me out a little bit with my mental health. But the point is that he's such an interesting person, because he deals with the brain. It's about how, because he can trick people, and and it makes us look. And I'm scared. The point is, I always joke about Darren Brown. I'd love to interview him, but I'd be so scared at the same time. Like, please don't, please don't trick me, because I know I'll probably be really susceptible to it. Do you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, he'd make me say like the word donkey, and I'm like, oh, what does it? You know what I mean? Like, oh, you know, like
how does that happen?
So I mean, but that's the thing, isn't it? Is that because it's interesting, because in his books, he sort of he gives you teasers, but he never really, not that I ever want to know that, because to be fair, I think actually if people have that type of power, it can be quite a nasty thing to have. You can really manipulate people. Yeah. But actually what he does, which I really appreciate and which is why I love him, sorry Soph, but is that for me, he's just one of these people who tries to use it in a way that, in a positive way, if that makes sense, if there is such a thing. You know, if he makes you look stupid, it's not in a way that you feel stupid, it's in a way to go, oh, actually,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Let me think about
let me
that.
think about this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think he's so interesting. And obviously he was famous obviously for doing the whole debunking of the Victorian paranormal stuff, which everybody knows anyway, you know, the plasma and all that stuff. And I mean, it's fascinating to look at. And obviously when he did like the planchette and the Ouija board thing, and I know that he does sort of like, he has doubts of that, but I suppose in certain environments and anything can be controlled anyway. And I know obviously working with the team, we know we're going to be covering stuff like that anyway. Yeah. But again, we're probably going to cover it on a more historical, practical level of what this is. Yeah. If you want to believe it, you can. If you don't, whatever. Yeah. But the point is we sort of go through that. We're not going to be like Darren Brown and try and expose. We're not here to expose anything. We're just out there to put out the questions and just sort of see.
And ask how it's happening.
Absolutely.
I do a lot of drawing.
Yep.
And I can go to a property. We do a lot of private investigations to help people just basically to debunk whatever it is that they're worried about and or find out what it is. And I can sit outside and do a sketch. And I get really surprised sometimes that when I get inside, it's really quite close. Yeah. And how does that happen, I wonder? And so I experiment with that, you know. I do that all of the time now. Wherever I go, I think, I'm going to do a quick sketch and think, you know, can I jump this time? Can I leap across that? Is it telepathy?
It's fascinating.
Is it foresight? I don't know what it is, but that's what's keeping us going.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about finding the ghost. It's not about trying to find somebody's grandma that's got a message. It's about finding out how the energy, the vibrations are working.
I think it's a perfect way to wrap up.
Okay.
Would you like to say anything to the audience out there? Any other bits of wisdom or advice or things for them to consider before we end?
Well, I would say, hello, everybody. I would say don't be afraid of things. If you are afraid of things, then you need to look at how to eliminate that, and people like us can help you do that. But there is very often an explanation, and it's when you've eliminated all of those practical things that can cause anomalies, that you're left with the evidence of something else, and that's what we're really interested in.
Yeah.
And I've never yet found it to be frightening. Mm-hmm. My experience have put me on edge because I've not been able to control them and I've not been able to understand them. And it's understanding it that makes it much easier to live with.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really mean that. It's been an incredible experience. We know that there's a commonality between this group.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm really looking forward to it, if I'm being honest. I'm so excited. Sophie's smiling behind as well. We're very excited because I think we know we've got an audience out there who love the paranormal stuff anyway with us. Right on cue, the dog. But I think we're really excited to sort of like look forward to everything that's happening.
It's a new path to walk down. And with the history and with the anomalies,
yes,
we can start asking questions about how that happens.
And the point is, it's for people out there to interact as well. It's for you guys in the comments. Be kind, obviously, please, as you well know. You shouldn't have to say that. But obviously, put your questions out and put stuff out. Obviously, we're going to put links to the team down below if you want to ask them specifically. Yeah, tell us your story. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that we've got lots of stuff coming up. Do you know what? It might even be that by the time this podcast episode's come out, we'll probably even started doing that stuff anyway. So just in case everybody's got to cover all bases. Might have already happened. We don't know yet. The power of foresight. Thank you so much, Sue. You're welcome. Right. Anytime. Thank you. Any more words for history, because history matters, and obviously the paranormal stuff. Great, isn't it? Take care, and much love to every single one of you out there. Thank you so much, and we will of course see you very soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye bye.